So imagine losing your job at 50 and facing life-changing events like a divorce. You would think that's the end, right? Well, not in the case of our special guest today. In fact, for her, this wasn't the end, but the beginning of your gift season. Meet Lynda, who turned life curveballs into a powerful reinvention story filled with purpose, passion, and possibility. Hi, my name is Oletilwe Ramashala, and I head up business development and strategic partnerships here at Sanlam Corporate. And I'm so excited to chat to Lynda Smith today because Lynda is an entrepreneur, a powerhouse, longevity advocate, and the founder of 50 Plus Skills. So we're having a chat on the back of the release of Sanlam Corporate's Age of Confidence study as we took on the responsibility to find out the real age where South Africans can really afford to retire comfortably and confidently. We weren't surprised to hear that it is not actually age 65, the official South African retirement age, but rather actually 15 years later, wait for it, age 80. And to help people discover their own confident retirement age, we've created an online calculator on the Age of Confidence website. We've added the link to the calculator in the description of this video. So, to kick off our discussion today, let's welcome our special guest, Lynda. We're so excited to hear your story. It sounds like it will be a huge inspiration to many. So, Lynda, welcome and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Oletilwe. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is all ours. So let's start with a very powerful phrase you love to use, Lynda. It's the gift season. So tell us about this quote. What does the phrase mean to you? How has longevity created unexpected opportunities for purpose and reinvention?
Right, so this is my favorite topic to talk about, but the shock of that, 80 is the new 65 in your campaign is a real challenge and would make anybody want to run in the wrong direction. And I will tell my own story a little bit later, but I have discovered and called this longevity a gift season. So in 2020 at Davos, longevity came onto the agenda for the very first time. And at the end of that session, they said that we will live 10 years longer than our parents' generation on average, and 20 years longer than our grandparents. Now, when you haven't saved enough and now you're even going to be living 10 or 15 years longer, that really kind of is a shock to the system. But within that are the challenges and the opportunities, because at the same time, during our working life, technology has changed so significantly. We can work for longer. We can learn right throughout our life, not mainly just in the first 25 years. And if we retired at 65 and lived to 95, that's like another 30 years. And if we're healthy, we probably more, the 70 is the new 50 from a health perspective, because technology is creating ways for us to know when we have diabetes, understand why people have heart attacks. If you think about surgery, it's changed so much, which is what is keeping us alive longer and healthier. And so why would we not want to try and work a little bit longer if we haven't saved enough? And that's why I love to call this the gift season. It gives us an opportunity to continue and really create something new for ourselves.
I absolutely love that, Lynda. That's a powerful statement, the gift season. You're certainly giving us that gift for life. Now, I think what stands out for me is that what you're saying, 70 is the new 50. I think when I was growing up, I used to think 40 is so old. And now when I'm like a year away from 40, it actually seems like, hey, 40 is not so old after all, right? So I love that 50 is certainly the new, I'm sorry, 70 is certainly the new 50. So, I mean, I alluded to this earlier on when you were telling us how your company come to be, when you absolutely loved, you had a life-changing event at 50, you loved working for a certain institution, and then that all came crumbling down. Please tell us about that life-changing event that happened overnight, and how did that moment then become the beginning of your next chapter?
Right. So I think our crossroads, because this is what I called this thing that happened to me, is a crossroads or a transition. And we all go through them throughout our lives. But we go through many more of them between 50 and 70 than any other period. And yet there is no work around trying to help people understand in a transition what happens. And so in my case, just as I turned 50, I was working, as I said, for this fantastic company, which was sold, and I lived in Johannesburg, and the business moved to Cape Town. And so I found myself grappling with what would I do next? Simultaneously at that time, my children, who were 23 and 25, 2 years prior to that, had got married. They got married 3 months apart, quite young, and both left the country.
Wow.
My daughter married a Thai and moved to Thailand. My son and daughter-in-law moved to London to go and do some work and traveling. And while I was working, the purpose for getting up every day was still there. But when the job went out the window, the children were gone. And I had been divorced a number of years. I actually got divorced at 39. But I was so focused on my children and the growth of my career and their lives that I actually didn't look inward to my own dreams until this crash happened at 50. And I have to tell you, I had a bit of a deep, dark hole pity party for about 6 months, actually. So I know what that feels like, because that's a lot. It's a lot of really personal things close to you that are changing all at once. And then I realized that I actually probably have 25 good years, unencumbered good years ahead of me. And best I pull myself together and use them, because this is this fabulous empty nest syndrome. And I know I see many posts on and have many conversations with people who feel that even though they haven't done anything else, the empty nest is a struggle for them. Leaving their job is a struggle. And so at the time, I was also doing a little bit of consulting work with Graham Codrington from Tomorrow Today. And one day Graham said to me, I know you're looking for something new to do. Why don't you look at what it means for the baby boomer generation, those of us who are now 55 to 70, nearly 75, 80, but in that time, 18 years ago, why don't you look at what it means? Because we will not retire like previous generations. And I'd been in the early childhood sector. I had not been in this sector, but I loved the sound of what he was telling me. And so that's what I did. I decided I was going to do some research and some investigation and back myself. And I actually also went back to study at Gibbs when I was 52. I did a social entrepreneurship diploma. It was in the very first year in 2009. And I did it on my company, which at that point was called Refirement Network. So teaching people to refire, not retire. And so, yes, I did turn my crossroads into something that I felt would bring me a beautiful purpose and a future. And all of the things that I've learned, I'm able to use now as a retirement life coach and also founder of 50 Plus Skills.
Lynda, your story is really powerful. I don't want to lie. Like, I resonate with you on so many levels. I think so many nuggets are shared here. Refire, not retire. That's the term that I'm going to now start using. And I think you've shared so many uh, critical points in terms of identity. I think so much of us put identity in our jobs, identity in our children. And me being a single mom, I can so relate to so many of those things. And it's important to pour into our cups and really, to what you were saying, looking inward into our dreams. So that's really, really powerful. Let's take a look at some of our research shows at Sanlam Corporate, with the age of confidence research, it shows that South Africans can only afford to retire at age 80. Now, there has been that misconception or misunderstanding out there in the industry that at age 65, everyone thinks that, I've saved enough money, but that's not necessarily the case. Now, how did that resonate with your own journey?
Right. So, as I said, I was divorced at 39 and looking after children. And we all know, and there are many of us who go through these kinds of valleys during our lives, that it's not a straight line. And we certainly do not save the 15% or whatever from 20 to 60. If you have done that, that's fabulous. But for real life, I have come across many people where that is not the case. And for myself at this stage, I sat with my financial planner at about the age of 52 to really, and in fact, at that point, I was using the mantra of, I will just work till the day I die. I don't have enough. And she said to me that day, what you do need to do is look up and face the reality of what does it really look like. And that's hard because it's easier to live in fear and put your head in the sand. But lifting my head and looking at myself in the mirror so that when I knew what that looked like, I could put a plan and a goals in place. And so we worked on it. And I think it's another thing that's really important around your financial advisor at this point in your life is that we have numbers of investments. Firstly, having a financial advisor and someone you build trust with. I meet so many people who don't have someone, and it starts there. And I may have had some retirement annuities, some money from my divorce settlement, a property, possibly one or two tiny little endowment policies. And at this point, when you're heading closer to the line of retirement, is to really understand what does it look like collectively, and how much debt do you have, how much do you need to draw down now, and when you retire, what does that look like? And so we did that exercise. I got brave and looked up, and it was a horrible picture. If I decided to start drawing down at 60, my money would have been finished by 64. 64.
4 years later, Lynda.
4 years.
That's a sobering.
So that was not an option. And so
oh my goodness.
What we decided is that I needed to put away as much as possible percentage-wise during my 50s, and I did do that. Try and release and reduce my debt, making sure that the bond was paid off and there was no debt by the time I got to 60. Start living a much simpler life and knowing what my budget is, and then earning enough money on a monthly basis between 60 and 70 to survive on and live on, and allow my investments to grow. So not purchasing any products at 60 or even at 65, and I'm now 68, but to allow my money to grow for another 10 years, and then look at the picture at 70. And as I said, I think the age calculator for me that you have done is showing that I'm on track now and will at 73 be comfortable to retire and for my money to last well into my 90s. And that has been an 18-year journey, but with action plans and a relationship every year with my financial planner.
That is just so incredible, Lynda. I think you've shared so many sobering moments, and I can tell you, you are saving lives. There's a lot of people out there with similar stories that are having to face that or come to that realization that they didn't save enough. I think you touched on, the question number 4 that I wanted to chat to you about the common challenges you see people over 50 facing when it comes to retirement, because you shared your story, especially those you assume they'd be done by that age. I mean, you spoke about having a financial planner, putting a plan in place, making your life simpler, so not accumulating a lot of debt, paying off your debt, not making a lot of purchases, and allowing your investments to grow, right? So I think you've answered that. And unless you want to touch something more on that, or I can go to the next question, but I think you've really perfectly, answered that question.
Yeah, so for individuals, I come across them a lot now in the work that I do. I run a program called The Next Chapter, and I share my own story to the delegates in the first session, because that head in the sand moment and no action, or not being vulnerable enough to talk about it, causes internal fear. And the fear immobilizes you, as I had verbalized, to say, I've just got to keep working till the day I die. And it was really fear that was getting in the way. And so when we lift our heads and are truthful with ourselves, we can move forward. And it causes purpose, actually. It creates the purpose rather than the spiraling down into depression. For a lot of people, they either, as I said, they don't have a financial advisor, or they don't have the financial literacy to understand or ask the right questions. And I really think
100%.
as we're heading to what I like to call taking over the baton, because as we move from our full-time profession or career or whatever it is we have done, and we're going to be living much longer, the baton passes to us. And so we need to take responsibility. The other thing that I find with a lot of people is, and you've mentioned the identity. Identity is massive. When we've worked for a long time in one place, our identity is who we are, rather than what we do, rather than who we are.
And who we are.
Yeah. And they struggle to find a reason to get up and purpose for this next season. But if you do this work, the inner work, and create uniquely what it would look like for you, you start to create hope and an opportunity to move forward with excitement. I see so many people depressed, but it's because they scared. They're scared, and they haven't had that conversation.
Yeah. And I loved how you've turned your story around, Lynda. And I think you said something so profound to say, when you start, or when you stop putting your head in the sand and actually getting to the truth of it all, that helps you to actually put a plan in place and have someone to walk the journey with you, like a financial planner who will help you in terms of putting goals in place, etc. And then refinding that purpose, because then that's something that reignites you to get up every morning and to empower other people through your story. So really, my cup is being filled as we speak right now. Because I think it's also a reality check that this is not necessarily someone at age 50, but also someone at my age of 38, turning 39. Are you constantly sure that you are, your retirement is in place? And that's why that calculator is so important for us to actually go and tap into it. People can go into our website at any time and just look at that Age of Confidence website to see, am I tracking well? And if you're not, then get your head out of the sand, find someone who knows what they're doing, and actually get proper plans in place. So yeah, absolutely. I love it, Lynda. So now I want to ask about, we talk about the 3 pillars at Sanlam: retirement age, wealth care, and health care, as well as self-care, right? How have these played out in your own life and the lives of people that you coach?
I think one of the things in in our new world of longevity is that the money is more critically important, but so is the life planning and making sure we look after our health. Those three things are three strong pillars. Whereas 10 years, 15 years ago, most people would say, oh, it's nice to have a bit of wrapping paper on the box, but the box is money. But I have found many unhappy, wealthy people and some purpose-driven people that are very happy and joyful with not as much. But it's about being able to holistically live your life well in this season. There's a book called The 100-Year Life where they talk about your tangible and your intangible assets. And your tangible assets are your money or your investments and probably your certificates and who you are, of what your work journey has looked like. Whereas the intangibles is your health, your social circle, your being able to deal with transformation and being resilient. And all of these come into those other two pillars. Relationships is a key one in the intangibles, is social circles and creating diverse people around you. So let me talk about myself first, and then we can talk further. So for me, I think I've spoken enough about personally from the wealth side of how I've coped with it, other than also having some policies in place up to when I was 65 to if there was an accident or I was disabled, to be able to create the buffer for myself because I didn't have enough cash. So that, that was there for a while, but then picking up the baton for wealth creation for myself. From a health span perspective, it's one thing that I've really, it's a word that's come up a lot now in the longevity world. And to really understand it, and a shock for me was, in America, there is a gap of 10 years in health span versus lifespan. So what does that mean? It means that there's 10 years of your life where you won't have decent health on average. That's the gap.
Wow.
And all of us want to live long, but we don't want to live long unhealthily. And so
100%.
concentrating on your health and the science behind health is showing us that the more we move, the better we sleep, the less stress we have, the better we improve our health, and then we live healthier for longer. That's the aim, so that you can reduce that gap. And so I have quite late found an exercise that I love, being aqua aerobics. I again had this talk in my head.
Nice.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get in the pool. I'm overweight. Fear. Until my sister-in-law one day said, listen, they all look the same. So just get in the water. And it's been a fabulous way of engaging with people right through the summer and the winter. Luckily, the water is warm. There is movement. Dr. Melody Diaga talks about our input into our brain to keep it alive is the senses. And in the water, you have the music, you have the water on your body, you have the people around you, the sounds, the sight, and the socialization. Wow. I lost 12 kilos in 1 year as a result of that. And so that was a big wealth benefit for me. So just finding something, and it's never too late. I think someone said movement, and the output of the brain, Melody Diaga says, is movement. So keeping our senses going and moving, not moving fast. Yes, the 10,000 steps is great, but being able to just try and keep going and becoming more flexible for longer. And then from a self-care point of view, I think having a growth mindset, remaining open to learning, whether that learning isn't another degree, a book, a podcast, listening to this conversation, This is how we learn, in tiny micro pieces. Making sure that you build people around you, younger and older and diverse in your life. They can make such a big difference. From a health perspective, they've done research in the UK to say that they sadly created a minister of loneliness because there are so many older people who are lonely. And loneliness is more detrimental than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So being
I
able to
think you
be
need to say
part
that
of,
again for people who are listening to this, because that is
loneliness,
very scary.
yeah, they've done the research, is equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Sure,
And that's why they appointed someone to help. But if we are diverse and we get out and we connect with, not with people just your own age, others as well. We learn so much from each other that way. We live in a fabulous world. I love to learn from my grandchildren. And sleeping, making sure you get enough sleep, making sure volunteering and finding purpose is also, I think, a self-care. I remember one year at Christmas, my children were overseas and I was on my own on Christmas Day, and I thought I can have a pity party or I can go to church and help because we were going to serve lunch to 40 orphans that day. I forgot about my own loneliness in the volunteering moment. And we can all do that. We live in a country where we can go read at a school. We can go and sit to someone on a bench. We can do, there are so many things we can do. So yes, I think these 3 pillars are really important.
Sure, that's so powerful. I think the loneliness part, and I think I'm also guilty of that, in the way you give and you give and you give, but you forget to fill your cup. And that goes with me with motherhood, is that it ties back to the whole identity thing that we spoke about earlier on in the conversation, to say, because when you're still young, you're trying to create this life for yourself. Not only that, your child, your children, your family, right? And you get so stuck onto that you forget about your self-care, your ways of, connecting. And then you think, let me volunteer, like what you're saying, but that there's still that other part that you need to actually fill. So I love that all that you've shared. For me, what I take from it is having that work-life balance and being able to say, what fills my cup? What new skill can I acquire? Like, I've started golfing. I can relate to what you were saying with, I think you said what is it, acrobatics? Or okay, there we go. Aqua aerobics. There we go. Aqua aerobics. Golf for me was always an intimidating sport. I'd always say I'd flirt with golf. I would always start and then stop and then start and stop, because not a lot of women golfers are out there. You feel alone, but then in the line of work that I'm in, golfing also just helps create very authentic relationships. You'd be able to get to know someone without knowing their identity. You just there to connect, and it also helps you overcome a fear and acquire a new skill set. So I feel like golf is my escape and it fills my cup. So I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. But I think a sobering moment was the loneliness equals to 15 cigarettes. That's very scary. And that everybody needs to do, have a self-introspection to say, okay, where am I going? At any age, where am I going? And because we can get into this rat race, right? And we're not taking a time to pause and saying, what fills my cup? How am I in terms of healthcare, wealth care, and self-care? So thank you for sharing those tips and what you do in your life in order to make sure that those areas are well, rounded. So let's talk about 50 plus. I went onto your website and I did a bit of, I would say, I wouldn't call it, it's almost like I was just so fascinated and I started looking at other things. I was like, oh my goodness, her mind is amazing. You started this in 2018. What role does it play in helping older South Africans learn to earn and also serve during this new life phase? I think before we even started, I shared that I have a mom who's 68, and we had to do the calculations ourselves because, like I said, she changes her age every year. So I always add 29 to make sure that we get the right age. But tell us more about 50 plus. 50 plus
Yes,
skills.
so we started the 50 plus skills, and I have some shareholders and people who think the same as I do. And in that gift season, the 50 to 75, and the 75 to 100. So I like to talk about the younger old and the older old. And so our focus is on the younger old, the 50 to 70 or 75. And my daughter said the other day to me, Mom, if you start talking about 70 be old, then you're going to have to include yourself because you're getting close to the line. So it's not a line. It's about what's going on here. It's about our health. If our health is not great, and genetically some of us are, you may slow down. But I sadly see too many younger old in their 60s who become depressed because once they have left the office and you were someone on a Friday and you are no one on the Monday and you've done none of this thinking or work, you start to spiral downwards into depression. And then it's really difficult to help someone to get up. So for us, the younger old have this gift season where we're creating something that our parents or grandparents didn't have. They moved straight into retirement. We need to remain engaged. And for each of us, it's unique. And we need to start doing it a few years before we get to the pensionable line of our company. Some are 60, some are 62. I know in the government now, they're saying 65. So what we have created is a membership community of people. And when I studied social entrepreneurship, my big, hairy, audacious goal was, what if we can create a skills bank of people in South Africa who can learn new skills to keep earning if they need to, but they can also serve and give back in their skills and their resources where needed. And so that was kind of what we did. So when you join, you create, and I know where you live, I know what your skills are, I know what you're passionate about, and we have talks online and we do newsletters around how to redo your LinkedIn profile, how can AI assist you. Some of these health things that I've spoken about, Dr. Melody Diaga came and spoke about why it's important that we keep moving and we use our senses. So we do talks on health. We do talks on how to keep earning. We've had some financial talks. Financial Planning Institute is one of our NPO members. We have a number of nonprofits as well, because we can then become the bridge to help people to cross the bridge to the right place to go and earn, to go and serve.
Wow.
So, for me, having been in the early childhood sector, that's where I would love to serve. For someone maybe in the animal sector, it may be in the youth development sector. We have a lot of coaches, we have a lot of facilitators. And so we are a community that inspire and stimulate each other and want to give back to the country as well. I run a course called The Next Chapter, which we run for employees in companies in the last 2 to 3 years of their life. And after the 6 months of the course, it's only 90 minutes online per month, but the topics are on identity, passion and purpose. You need to think about your money, things I've been speaking about now, where you're going to live, what are your family dynamics? Because in the longevity world, our parents are living longer, our children are staying at home longer. So we often are sandwiched with care issues for our parents, or still supporting our 25-year-old child who hasn't left home.
That's so true.
And so all of these challenges help when we're in a community, and also in a community where we're pioneering new thinking. It's not moving into my grandparents' retirement. I see too many people still doing that, though. So we help individuals to navigate this journey. but we are not a recruitment site. We are there to help people walk their unique journey. Because we are all unique from a money perspective, a health perspective, a skills perspective, and each of us has a space, but we have to find, I think, our gifts that we're born with and use those in the season, whether it's to sit with older people or take them to the doctor or be an au pair for a young professional couple who need help with their children, or whether it's cooking food, or whether it's being a coach or a facilitator. The lists are endless, but I find that too many people are desperate to keep working and send their CV out and get no response. That's not what we feel you need to do in this season. The world of work has changed, and we need to find a space where we fit as part of our life, not all of our life. So I'd say I have a portfolio life where I do some work, I do some volunteering, I do some leisure, I visit my children and my grandchildren. And so we each have to find our own space. That's what we do at 50.
And what a fulfilling life, Lynda. The way you've just summed it up is just so beautiful. But already I can see you and my mom getting on like a house on fire. Trust me, she is going to gravitate from this, because I always think of just from her, like her skill sets, being a district official before she retired. Before that, the teaching skills that she's got. She used to fight for kids to get into schools, kids who were from, compromising backgrounds, let me put it that way, and would fight for them because they were academically strong. Now they've graduated, they're CAs, one has bought her mom a house and stuff. So I always say that, our parents go beyond the call of duty, and you then saying crossing the right bridge to serve, I think encapsulates everything. Is that everyone has a gift and a calling and a purpose, and they can use that to still keep earning but enjoying at the same time. So the age of confidence, Lynda, is also about emotional and psychological readiness. I think you've touched on it a bit, but what mindset shifts are needed for people to embrace working and thriving later in life?
It's definitely so. In my retirement coaching course that I did out of the States, there were 5 psychological factors that they talked about. The one is, where will your money come from when you no longer earn a salary? So the fear of with that money, and even for some people, when they get it out of their annuity rather than earning it, feel like psychologically they haven't earned it. I think especially for some men that becomes an issue that that can come up. The second one is structure to your day. What am I going to do when I have 24/7 and I have the remote in my hand? Sadly, too many keep that remote in their hands with too many hours in front of the television or on their phones. And don't get out and don't create leisure for themselves. And so structure, and that's where I like to say, do some volunteering, some learning, some earning, and that helps to then structure your day. The third one is purpose, or a reason to get up. The fourth one is socialization, as I've said, but for people who maybe have built really strong relationships at work, but haven't created those skills or circles outside of the office. They really struggle with connections, because it doesn't mean those friends go away, but the dynamics are different. You're not seeing them at the water cooler or at the coffee station every day to tell them the next part of your story. So we need to create other networks. And the fifth one is status and identity, which is a tough one. Who am I when I no longer have the corner office, the title, the teacher? You know what? I think some of the doing words, we can be teachers all our lives, but if you're in a school and you're a teacher and the children are there, it's the internal work it's deep work that we have to do. It's solitary work to be able to create this next season. There's a fabulous book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. And Chip Conley, who mentored the young Airbnb team. So the first part of the story is how he worked in his 50s with this team in their 20s, that he traded their digital skills for his emotional and the leadership skills. And he termed something called a menturn. He interned with them on technology, and they mentored with him on leadership and emotional quotient. And we don't do enough of that in our workplace. Ageism creeps in rather than building great, diverse, intergenerational teams where we can learn from each other. So status and creating those kinds of things are really, really important. And he makes this statement. He says, everybody will grow elderly, but not everyone will become a modern elder. And it's because it takes internal work to shift your identity. And our identity is ingrained because we've done it for 20, 30 years. Our brains says, that's who I am. But actually it's not.
Yeah, sure. I don't even know where to start. I started scribbling, Lynda, then I just stopped because I'll find as you're talking, I'll just be scribbling because so many nuggets and wisdom was shared. But I think what will be useful for us, especially for this webinar and recording, is that there's books that you shared. Now you just talked about Wisdom at Work. I'll ask you to actually give us the title and the author, as well as 100-Year Life. I think you shared as well. So that would be great so that people can actually walk away with those two books to actually read. And if there's anything else, then you can share for us. But so many, I don't actually want to repeat what you just said because it was a mouthful, and I feel like I'll do a disservice if I try and articulate what you've just shared with us. But finally and lastly, Lynda, what's that one practical piece of advice as your parting words that you'd give to someone approaching 50 and starting to ask, what's next for me? Especially in the context of the age of confidence.
So instead of fear, you've been given a gift. Make sure you pick up your baton and you unwrap your gift and engage with others. Learn, unlearn, and relearn. It's an exciting time that we can do that. Start to dream again. I think for many, we need to see hope, not fear. And from an earning perspective, be the solution to someone's problem, and you will find money follows. It can be just a tiny thing, like I've mentioned, just a few examples, but there are so many ways in which we can earn even just an extra few thousand a month can stop the gap, which can help us to create our gift and our future.
Lynda, I cannot believe it's the end. I could go on and on with you. Honestly, thank you so much for your time. It has certainly also been a reawakening for me as well in terms of how I go about constructing my life and how I go about identifying myself as an individual, and also just learning, unlearning, and relearning that, we shouldn't put a lot of identity on who we are or what our titles are, but actually filling more on who am I outside of my work? Who am I outside of me being a mother? Who is Ole, that Oletilwe Ramashala, and I think rewiring my brain now, while I still have a bit of time, is actually important because like what you said earlier on, what we tell ourselves for 30 years, it's very hard to sort of wire that. So it's actually important for many of our people who are listening at different ages that they can take something for them to say, hang on, this is a time for me to actually do a bit of self-introspection. And for those who are over 50, this is the time to actually realize that 70 is the new 50. So it's not over, it's just all about how do you then relook at what's been given to you and the purpose and the talents that God has bestowed upon you, and how do you then start earning. I like what you said in terms of where there's a problem and you find a solution, the money will follow. So thank you so much, Lynda. This has certainly been insightful. We truly appreciate it. And I know that this is only but the beginning of us interacting. I will certainly ensure that Sanlam hears your story across our group, not just corporate, but across our group. Again, thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. I really have enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to meeting your mother.
I would love that. Thank you so much.